What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 14 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024. I'm your host, Zach Malat, alongside Josh Malat once again. Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm all good. How about those Yankees, huh? We got a couple more days until the World Series starts. What a time.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll get into the Yankees in just a second, but please subscribe below. Check out some of our previous episodes and follow all of our social accounts. We do start today with a couple of words I started Monday's episode with, the generational. And that man is Juan Soto, who steps up when the moment is at its biggest and sends the Yankees to the World Series for the first time since 2009 with a 3-run home run in the top of the 10th inning off of Hunter Gaddis to give the Yankees a 5-2 lead, and it was a 5-2 final for New York in Game 5 of the ALCS. Josh, just first reactions to this game, and Juan Soto, that's why they brought him here. And the big moment, he steps up. I mean, the at-bat, you can talk everything about it. One of the greatest at-bats really in Yankees history, fighting off every pitch in the zone and finally gets a fastball up high and sends it out to send the Yankees to the Fall Classic.
I mean, that was just an incredible at-bat by Juan Soto, one of the greatest at-bats in Yankee history, maybe even MLB history, and that at-bat was really the epitome of who Juan Soto is and what he has meant to the Yankees. I mean, the way that he was just locked in, you could see him just staring down the pitcher, waiting for his pitch, and you know, obviously he's got the eye of an absolute eagle. He'll only swing at pitches in the zone, but even if there's a pitch in the zone, if he doesn't think that he can handle it, he's going to spoil it until he gets that pitch that's in his wheelhouse and until he sees that pitch that he can handle, and that's exactly what he did. He kept on spoiling pitch after pitch after pitch until he got that fastball up in the zone, right in his wheelhouse that he drove to right center field and sent the Yankees to the World Series. Just an incredible at-bat, an incredible game. I mean, really, all three of those games in Cleveland, absolute nail-biters, sit on the edge of your seat type of games. I mean, games 3 through 5 all came down to the final at-bat, and Juan Soto gets the job done, sends the Yankees to the World Series. And obviously, if not for Giancarlo Stanton, we'd be talking about Juan Soto taking home American League Championship Series MVP. But another key moment in this game, man on third in the 6th inning, 2 open bases, and they still elect to pitch to Giancarlo Stanton despite a mightily struggling Jazz Chisholm on the bench or on deck right after Giancarlo Stanton. Why they gave Stanton a pitch to hit and continued to pitch to him, beyond me. But as a Yankee fan, and if you're the Yankees, you'll absolutely take it. Giancarlo Stanton with an absolute incredible, monstrous, no doubt 2-run home run to tie the game. And that was pretty much, you know, the theme of the whole series, right? Giancarlo Stanton and Juan Soto getting the big hits under the bright lights when the Yankees needed it the most. And they're going to need those two guys to continue to step up leading into the World Series.
Yeah, definitely, Josh. And we could get to Stanton in just a second when we preview the World Series, because I think it's bigger then. Right now, for this game, I want to look at the bullpen and their job that they came into this game with really the game on the line after Rodon gave up those 2 runs in the game, and it got a little bit away from him in that 5th inning where just some traffic on the bases and Cleveland able to take advantage of it with an RBI single from Kwan. But you look at it in the end, the bullpen comes in and 4 guys, really 3 of them that you wouldn't expect too much, plus Luke Weaver. When you look at Mark Leiter Jr., Tim Hill, and Jake Cousins all coming in next to Luke Weaver, what an absolute performance by Jake Cousins, especially. He comes in 29 pitches overall, 4 strikeouts. Every single one of his outs was a strikeout. Tim Hill pitched very well in this one. I think the big thing is how many hits allowed. They only allowed 2 hits in almost 4 innings to this Guardians team. I mean, what a performance by all of these guys, and actually almost 5 innings to this Guardians lineup that's been really, really hot. So when you look at it, I mean, Mark Leiter Jr., Tim Hill, Jake Cousins, obviously Luke Weaver there, but those 3 guys before him deserve all the praise in the world for really locking down this game after Rodon went out.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at these 2 teams, and the team whose bullpen, you know, got all the headlines was the Guardians bullpen. That's the bullpen that everybody was talking about, obviously, with their performance that they had in the regular season and the performance that Clase had during the regular season. But it was the Yankees bullpen that stepped up when it mattered most and got the job done in this series. And you look at these guys, you said it, Malamud. A lot of these guys are guys that you wouldn't expect that were kind of unsung heroes that kind of came out of nowhere and became key bullpen guys for the Yankees. I mean, Mark Leiter Jr. wasn't even on the ALCS roster to begin the series. It was only on the roster to because of the injury to Ian Hamilton. Didn't begin pitching in playoff games for the Yankees until Game 4 of the championship series. But he came up gigantic for this Yankees team 2 games in a row. Got out of a jam in Game 4. Got out of another jam again in Game 5. So Leiter, without his contributions, I don't know if the Yankees win Game 4 or Game 5. And then what else can you say about Tim Hill? I mean, the guy seems to pitch every day, and he always gets the job done. Kind of a funky lefty. Got let go by the White Sox, of all teams. I mean, what a job by Tim Hill. He's really become an integral reliever for the Yankees in that circle of trust in their bullpen, and he's been a reliable guy. And what else can you say about Jake Cousins and the performance that he had in Game 5? Came in the 7th inning with 2 outs, got out of that inning, got out of a jam, struck out all 4 batters he faced, and was absolutely magnificent. And then Luke Weaver, what else can you say about him? Obviously, he had the rough outing in Game 3 when he allowed the Guardians to come back and tie that game, but picked up right where he left off before that. Didn't let that moment get to him. The moment hasn't gotten to Luke Weaver at all throughout the entire playoffs. Absolutely cool as a cucumber. And Luke Weaver's just been absolutely huge for this Yankees team. And what else can you say about him? Where would the Yankees be without Luke Weaver? Bounced back from that rough performance in Game 3 with another great performance in Game 5. 2 brilliant innings, got the win in this game. And between Leiter, Hill, Cousins, and Weaver, those 4 guys really shut the door, weathered the storm, and gave the Yankees offense some time and allowed for Juan Soto to do what he did in the 10th inning. So the Yankees' bullpen performance to allow them to move on to the World Series cannot go unnoticed.
Yeah, 100%. And Weaver going to be a big guy when we talk about this next series. He's going to be very impactful. But the Yankees win the AL pennant. They defeat the Cleveland Guardians 5-2 in Game 5, a 4-1 series win for the Yankees. And they advance to the Fall Classic. So let's get into it, Josh. And Game 1 starts on Friday. I mean, it's the first time since 2009 that you and I have watched the Yankees in the World Series. Very exciting times. And I mean, they go up against what people are saying the best team in baseball, definitely the best record in baseball this season. But the 2 titans really in Major League Baseball going to battle the 12th time that these teams meet in the World Series, the first time since 1981. It's going to be Garrett Cole against Jack Flaherty on the mound in Game 1, starting 8:08 on Friday. Josh, just quickly, I mean, your expectations heading into this monster of a series. It really, like I said, 2 titans in the MLB, and they're going to battle in LA on Friday.
I mean, how great is this for baseball, right? I mean, the stars are aligning for what should be an incredible World Series. I mean, you said it, this is the 12th time that these 2 teams will be meeting in the Fall Classic. First time since 1981. It's been too long. I mean, it's long overdue. It seems like for the better part of the last half decade or so, we've been talking every year. When are the Yankees and Dodgers going to collide in the World Series? It seems like every year the Yankees and the Dodgers are the 2 favorites to come out of their league, and then something will happen. The Dodgers have made it to the World Series a decent amount of times in recent years, but something will happen where one or both teams will have an unexpected playoff exit, and we don't get the matchup that we've anticipated. But finally, it has happened. The stars have aligned, and these 2 teams will be meeting in the Fall Classic. First time in a very long time, and this is the most common World Series matchup that we've seen in our history, and this is just great for baseball, right? I mean, the superstar power in the series between Ohtani and Betts versus Judge and Soto. I mean, these are the 2 best teams in baseball, and this is what we want to see. Not that the Cinderella runs of the wild card teams in recent years haven't been cool to see, but it's good when the World Series matchup is between the 2 number 1 seeds, the 2 best teams in baseball. I mean, this World Series is going to garner a hell of a lot more attention than, say, last year with a couple of unexpected wildcard teams when Texas and Arizona met in the World Series. But my expectations, I think that this should be a wild, amazing, crazy back and forth series. We have a hell of a pitching matchup in Game 1 as well between Garrett Cole and Jack Flaherty, and it should be a hell of a series. I'm expecting a long series for this to go 6 or 7 games, and for these teams to throw punches and haymakers, and hopefully we get a couple of epic battles in there too. But from the Yankees side of things, obviously people are gonna say, the Yankees had an easy path to the World Series. Obviously, no path to the World Series is gonna be easy. You're here for a reason. You're gonna if you get to the World Series, you have to face the opponents that are put in front of you. There's nothing that you could do to control who you play against. but the Dodgers are no Royals and they're no Guardians. This is a completely different animal from the previous two postseason teams the Yankees have faced on their route to the World Series. So although the Yankees did get the job done beating the Royals in 4 and taking care of the Guardians in 5 in the championship series, you have to think that the Yankees are going to have to score a hell of a lot more runs than they did in their previous 2 playoff series, and the offense is going to have to get going, and they're going to have a lot more timely hitting, and a lot more guys are going to have to step up on offense other than Juan Soto, Gleyber Torres, and Giancarlo Stanton, especially Aaron Judge, if the Yankees are going to have a chance to beat what is an incredible high-powered offense led by Ohtani, Betts, and Teoscar Hernandez in the Los Angeles Dodgers. But should be a hell of a series, and really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and a lot of people, you mentioned the schedule, like the Yankees, people would say didn't even play their best game just yet heading into the World Series, and some of that could be true. I think when people said that, it was more in the middle of the Cleveland series, and then you saw in games 4 and 5 the Yankees really getting into the zone and getting their guys going. Obviously, Giancarlo Stanton is far into the zone right now, and what a player to have for the Yankees in this postseason. He's been absolutely tremendous. And I think when you look at the Dodgers pitching, it's not as strong as some of the other pitching staffs maybe they have faced. I would say maybe the Royals have an advantage over the Dodgers when it comes to starting pitching. The thing I will say about the Dodgers is they have a better bullpen, clearly, than a lot of the teams that the Yankees have gone up against. There is an argument about Cleveland. However, the Yankees were able to really just take on that Cleveland bullpen and take it to them. So there's an argument come postseason time if Cleveland's bullpen is truly the best in the MLB, but that's a story for another time. When you look at the Yankees Dodgers overall, you'd give the starting pitching advantage to the Yankees. The bullpens are pretty close, and you'd probably give the lineup advantage to the Los Angeles Dodgers based on they go a lot deeper than the Yankees have, especially in this postseason. I mean, 8 and 9 hitters. You got Kike Hernandez. I'd take in the postseason over anybody the Yankees have 6 through 9 in their lineup. I mean, from that standpoint, it does look pretty even, though, because the Yankees have the starting pitching advantage. The bullpens are pretty close, and you'd give the Dodgers the batting advantage. I think in the end, it's a very close series, and it really just comes down to the wire. Don't make mistakes and rely on your hitting. If you're the Yankees, you need 6 through 9 to really step up in the series. I think that's a huge key to defeating this wagon of a team that is the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing for me for the Yankees is, making all the plays in the field and not giving the Dodgers any extra outs or any extra opportunities. Because we saw against Cleveland and Kansas City, the Yankees had a couple of bizarre defensive lapses and a couple of errors that could have really cost them. And if they were playing a team like the Dodgers, they may have taken advantage of that, and it may have really come back to bite the Yankees in the butt and potentially lose them a game and a series. Obviously, the Guardians and the Royals are not on the Dodgers level, and the Yankees were able to escape with some of the mistakes that they made. But against a team like the Dodgers, you cannot give them any extra opportunity, any extra life, any extra outs and innings, because a team like the Dodgers will hit and take advantage. So if you're the Yankees, you just need to play clean, sound baseball and not give the Dodgers any extra chances or any extra opportunities. And then on the starting pitching side of things, this is a Dodgers team that just set the record for most runs scored in any postseason series ever in their 6-game NLCS win against the Mets. I mean, their offense exploded, went off for double-digit runs multiple times. So if you're the Yankees, your pitching has been absolutely magnificent, but you haven't had to face a lineup like the Dodgers yet, and it all starts with Gerrit Cole. Gerrit Cole, we've seen him make 3 postseason starts, 1 really good, but 2 not so very good. So if you're Gerrit Cole in Game 1 of the World Series, you need Gerrit Cole to act like the ace that you paid him to be, and you need him to set the tone in the series and really give you an epic performance to really set the tone in the series and not allow the Dodgers offense to pick up where they left off in the NLCS.
100%, Malat. And game 1 of the World Series takes place on Friday at 8:08. Next time Josh and I talk, it'll already be previewing game 5 if necessary. Hopefully it's happening. I think when you look at this series, though, it should be a really strong series overall. two of the best teams in the MLB. They're arguably the two best teams in the MLB from this season. So should be a good one. Game one, 8:08 on Friday. Let's talk about the Dodgers on the other side of New York, though, Josh, as they defeated the New York Mets. And you mentioned some of that series, but let's just specifically quick talk on game six, a 10-5 Dodgers win. And I said the difference in this one was that Sean Manaea goes only 2 innings and the Dodgers were able to get to him early. Once you saw that, I mean, the Mets really did not have a lot of hope based on their pitching was just a little bit weakened. And this series has put their pitching through a lot. And once you see your ace, your star pitcher on the mound only going 2 innings, it's just not enough in the end. And the Mets fall and end their season in game six of the NLCS.
Yeah, obviously Manaea picked a bad time for him to have his one subpar postseason start. I mean, he's been integral to the Mets getting to this point and had been so magnificent up until this point. But a rough outing from Manaea, and you have to think that the Dodgers really did a good job of preparing from the first time they saw Manaea when Manaea was much better earlier in the series. But the Mets got out to an early 1-0 lead in the top of the first inning. Pete Alonso drove in the first run of the game. And if you're the Mets, you're thinking, wow, we just came off a dominant winning game in game five to force the series back to LA. Pete Alonso gets us off to this incredible start with a 1-0 first inning lead. We can actually do this and win this game and force a game seven. But unfortunately, the Mets magic ran out and Tommy Edman happened. And Tommy Edman, I mean, what an acquisition he's been for the Dodgers. I mean, just an incredible trade piece, kind of an afterthought in St. Louis. Was a nice player all these years, but kind of a player that St. Louis threw away. Didn't feel like he was a part of the future. Didn't feel like they needed him anymore. Dodgers didn't really have to give up much to get him. Pick up Tommy Edman, and all of a sudden he's hitting cleanoff in a potential clinching game to get to the World Series, and he's been the Dodgers' best hitter in the championship series. So what else can you say about Tommy Edman? Really kind of with an incredible response to kind of turn the tides and turn the momentum around from the Mets back to the Dodgers. Obviously, the Mets had that big game five win, got off to the fast start in the top of the first inning, but you kind of feel like that Tommy Edman hit kind of set the tone for the rest of the game and flipped the momentum switch from all in favor of the Mets back in favor to the Dodgers. So Tommy Edman with an incredible job of responding there in the bottom of the first inning with a 2-run double, I believe, there to put the Dodgers back on top 2-1. And then from there, the Dodgers never looked back, scored 4 in the third. It looked like the Mets had a chance. The Mets really did have a couple chances in the middle innings, the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth, to get back in the game, but they really left a lot of guys on base. And then by then it was too little too late. The Dodgers tacked on a lot more runs in the eighth inning, and then that was it for the Mets season. But although the score was 10-5, the final score doesn't indicate how close this game was and how close this game could have been, because the Mets did have their opportunities with stranding a lot of runners on base. I mean, the Mets and Dodgers both had the same amount of hits. They both had 11. They each had 11 hits. The difference is the Dodgers were able to cash in with runners in scoring position and score those base runners on all those hits that they got. But the final score won't indicate just how close this game was and just how many chances the Mets had to potentially get closer in this game and potentially even win this game. But ultimately, once the Dodgers responded in the bottom half of the first and extended the lead further later in the game, there was just no looking back for the Dodgers, and it was just a tough night for Mets pitching and for Manaea, who had just been so good throughout this entire Mets postseason run.
Yeah, 100% agree with you, Josh. And games 3 and 4 really just killed the Mets in the end. I mean, those two games, you come back home with a 1-1 series tie after getting a game in LA in game 2, and then those two games just completely deflate this team. They deflated the crowd. Obviously, they then won game 5, and it was a good sign for the Mets. But yeah, Manaea he didn't have his stuff in this one, and the Mets go home in a 10-5 loss in the NLCS in game 6. But Josh, I mean, talking about the Mets now, it's a rough topic right now for New York, because they have a lot of free agents now, and this was a team that I mean, they didn't completely go all in, but like it seems like they did make some moves to try and go for it after a nice hot month of June and on from that. And now they have a lot of free agents that we have to talk about here. I mean, I'll just go down the quick list of this. Pete Alonso, Sean Manaea, who has a opt-out in his contract, Jose Quintana, Luis Severino, Jesse Winker, JD Martinez, Jose Iglesias, and then you got pitchers like Ryan Stanek, Adam Ottavino, Drew Smith, Brooks Raley, and Harrison Bader as well. And they're like, when you look at this, you say, oh no, like this is a rough situation for the Mets because I mean, Manaya's probably he almost certainly gonna decline that option that he has for next year, and the Mets are gonna have to pay him a nice deal if they want him back. I think when you look at it, Josh, which of these guys, if you're the Mets, are you really looking at and slamming down, bring them back? Or is there anybody that you're just saying, all right, see you later. It's time.
Well, the number one guy that the Mets have to bring back, and I just don't see a scenario in which he does not return to the Mets and become a Met for life, is Pete Alonso. I mean, this is a guy that has been the face of the franchise for the last half decade, ever since he came up and set the rookie home run record in 2019. I mean, you have to think that Pete Alonso is going to be brought back. There was some doubt as Pete Alonso struggled down the stretch as to whether or not he would be a Met, and as to whether or not the Mets would actually be interested in re-signing him. But then he hit that gigantic home run to save the Mets season in Milwaukee to really jumpstart this Mets postseason run. And you have to think that after that home run and after the run that the Mets went on, and just how much he's meant to this franchise overall ever since he came up 5 years ago, you have to think that the Mets are going to do everything that it takes to re-sign him. And Pete Alonso, I feel like, knows that. Obviously, he finally is a free agent. He's going to test the waters. He's going to test the open market. He's going to get his big payday. I'd imagine that he's going to make somewhere between 120, 150, maybe even 175 million dollars. He's going to get his money. But at the same time, Pete Alonso doesn't seem like the type of guy where it's all about the money. Yes, he's going to get his payday. He's going to make his money. But at the same time, being a part of the Mets and being in New York means a lot to him. And I feel like he knows that too. And I feel like the Mets and him are going to be able to negotiate and come to an agreement that benefits both sides, where Pete Alonso's a Met for life. The Mets keep their guy, but he also gets a fair contract and gets the money that he deserves. So that's the top guy that comes to mind. But as far as the Mets, they're really in an interesting situation, right? I mean, obviously in the Steve Cohen era, he came in and they immediately started making big splashes and signing a lot of free agents and spending a lot of money. And 2 years ago, they did that and made a lot of big splashes and brought in Scherzer and brought in Verlander and brought in all these big name players, and that didn't work out. And then they took a step back and sold those pieces off and weren't expected to compete. And instead, it took a different approach. And instead of going all in and signing guys to 30 million AAV, 40 million AAV, and signing these superstars, they took a different approach and kind of took flyers on a lot of these veterans that were kind of looking for a home on short-term 1 and 2 year deals. And look how that worked out. I mean, pretty much all of them hit, right? They took a flyer on Manaea, Quintana, Severino, Winker, JD Martinez, Jose Iglesias. The list goes on and on and on. And all those guys happened to hit and become key contributors to this Mets team that made the playoffs and made the run that they went on. So now the Mets are in a really interesting spot because the last time they went superstar hunting, it didn't work out. Then they kind of went into a rebuild / retool mode where they signed savvy veterans to short-term deals, and they weren't expected to compete, but then it led to them competing. So now after going on this run and making it all the way to Game 6 of the NLCS, I'm really interested to see what kind of approach the Mets take. Are they going to take more of the same approach as last year and bring back a lot of their guys and sign more, high risk, high reward guys to maybe 1 or 2 year deals and take flyers on guys that maybe are looking for homes, kind of like what they did last year? Are they going to do a mix of both and maybe sign back some of their guys, but not bring back everybody? And maybe Steve Cohen reverts back to what he did a couple years ago and goes back superstar hunting, looking to make the big splash. I could kind of honestly see the Mets doing a mix of both, but I honestly see Steve Cohen wanting to go into this offseason making a big splash. I mean, the Mets should be in win now mode completely after making it all the way to Game 6 of the NLCS and after the postseason run that they just went on. But the Mets are in an interesting spot right now because they weren't expected to win this year. All of a sudden, they did a lot of winning. So are they going to get too anxious and too overzealous? And how are they going to approach this newfound, taste of winning? Are they going to try to build on it? Or are they going to try to keep the band together and keep the team together and kind of run it back? Or are they going to really be anxious and overzealous and kind of really go right all in and try to build on this by going superstar hunting in the big name pool of free agents and try to bring in a superstar like what Steve Cohen has tried to do ever since coming to the Mets with all the money in his deep pockets. But the Mets are in a really interesting spot, and we'll see what route they take. Are they going to bring back a lot of their guys? Are they going to sign superstars? Maybe a mix of both. The Mets are in a really weird spot right now. And this is a team that wasn't expected to win, but now all of a sudden could be amongst the World Series favorites going into next year after the run they went on this year. So really will be interesting to see.
Yeah, and they're probably gonna give a call to the other guy on the other side of New York. So we'll talk about that. But I mean, when you look at what the Mets can do this offseason, yeah, the money is there. Obviously, Steve Cohen's gonna provide it, but I mean, a lot of these guys were key to the run, like you said, Josh. So should be interesting if they go after him or if they say see you later. Like I mean, I think Mania and Alonso, the top two guys that you're really looking at. And Mania, it's based on price and really how much he wants. Alonso, I feel like what you said, it's more of like he's not going to take a full amount of money if it means, all right, I want to stay with the Mets. So when you look at that, I look at it and there could be guys just walking out the door. I mean, a lot of the rest of the guys that we said just based on, I mean, they got to pay a lot of guys now, the Mets. And if they're in win now mode, they have to be willing to do that, and they certainly are with Steve Cohen as their owner. So interesting stuff, and obviously something we'll talk about in the near future. But the Mets season ends in Game 6 of the NLCS. A huge offseason ahead for the Mets, and it should be interesting to find out in the next month or so, or 2 months or so, who the Mets really go after and what's the deal in free agency for the Mets. So should be interesting as we look towards that. And let's move things from baseball to basketball. And it was a celebration for the Boston Celtics yesterday. Really wasn't a celebration for the New York Knicks, though, as the Celtics on ring night win 132 to 109 and defeat the Knicks in pretty dominant fashion in the end. Of course, the Knicks end up making a little bit closer than it seemed throughout the game and a 23-point win after all for the Boston Celtics. And rightfully so, like they deserve this one, Josh. 29 three-pointers they made, tying an NBA record, and they were trying for about, I think, 6 minutes to beat that record and just couldn't seem to find a three-pointer out of that after being red hot the entire night. But when you look at it, Boston wins it by 23, and it's one for the Knicks that you look at and say, well, Brunson and Towns both didn't play the fourth quarter. This game was really out of reach at that point. When you look at it, though, I mean, the Knicks couldn't stop the threes, but also Boston's the best team in the NBA. They clearly are. That's why they won the NBA championship last year. And when you look at it overall, you cannot judge your season on games like this. You judge them more on how far you're progressing with a guy like Towns alongside Brunson. And when you look at that, as well as Mikal Bridges, you look at where they place in the end in the Eastern Conference and where they're sitting throughout the year. That's the judge of more than opening night and a loss to the Celtics in the end.
Yeah, ultimately the final number is going to say that the Celtics shot 48% from three. If not for that late game swoon when they were just jacking up three after three after three and they went ice cold trying to break the record. If you take away all that, I'm pretty sure they shot about 98% from three. The Celtics just could not miss, and they proved why they were the NBA champions and why they are still clearly the top dogs and the clear best team in basketball. But if you're the Knicks and you're a Knicks fan, it's easy to overreact after this game, right? All these big time additions. You built this team to match up against a team like the Celtics. And you got destroyed. You got annihilated, and you looked really bad. And the offense ultimately wasn't shooting the three well, and they couldn't guard the three. So ultimately, there are a lot of ways that you can overreact after this game. But you got to remember, it's one game, and I don't know if the odds could have been stacked more against the Knicks on an opening night game than this game last night. I mean, you think about it, the Knicks have a brand new group together that hasn't played a game together yet. They're going on the road on ring night to the defending champ's house against the best team in the league in Boston, a hostile environment to play on opening night. And you just take all those factors into account and the fact that you don't have the chemistry yet because you haven't played games together yet. And the odds were just severely stacked against the Knicks in this game. So ultimately, I think that this is just water under the bridge. If you're the Knicks, you just have to forget this game ever happened and just move on with your season and just know that there are better days ahead. But on the flip side, on the bright side, you have to look at this game and be like, does it get any more difficult? Does it get any harder than this? I mean, does it get any more difficult the rest of the way on your schedule than opening in the on the defending champs home court. I mean, from here, it should only be easier and things should only be looking up for the Knicks in the future. So this was a big time test, a test that the Knicks failed and did not handle all that well, but ultimately it's one game. It was opening night. These guys are still learning how to play with each other, and from here you just have to take this as a lesson, move on, and build on it. But ultimately, my biggest concern for the Knicks was the shooting of Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby. I mean, the two guys combined to shoot 2 for 11 from three, and if the Knicks want any chance at being an NBA contender like many people expect them to be, those numbers are going to have to improve. And OG and Bridges are going to have to be a wing duo that you could kick out to, and that could be really effective shooting from three, because that's why they got them, right? I mean, you have Towns, who can spread the floor, is the best shooting big man that we've seen, and Brunson, who's obviously going to penetrate in the lane, but you need Bridges and Anunoby to be guys that could slash in the paint and cut when needed, but also stand in the corner and stand on the wings and be a guy that Towns or Brunson can kick out to and be a reliable three-point shooters. Other than that, obviously, it's not a good look that the Knicks almost gave up the record for the most three-pointers ever made in a game. But at the same time, it's only one game. These guys are going to get the hang of it. These guys are going to get used to playing with each other. The defense will improve. I'm not too concerned about that. The shooting, I believe, will improve. Ultimately, I think it's just one game. It was just a really rough start where it went just about as bad as it possibly could have went, and things will only get better, and things will only look up for the Knicks from here on out.
Yeah, and Josh, I mean, my takeaway from all the negatives to a positive is that Deuce McBride might be the next sixth man of the year. Like, I mean, what a performance last night. He could not miss. He was 8 of 10 from the field, 4 of 5 from three, had 22 points off the bench. If they're getting production from Deuce McBride like that, I mean, it's a scary, scary guy to come into the game, especially when those starters are out. Then teams go with some of their bench guys, some of their role players. I mean, Deuce McBride looked really, really good, and it kind of reminded me of like Emmanuel Quickly coming off the bench for the Knicks. However, I think it was even better than that because of the defense, because of the impact that he can have on the floor. I think Deuce McBride, under the radar, is one of the top guys that the Knicks can rely on off the bench this year.
Absolutely. I mean, the Knicks got annihilated in this game, and this was about as embarrassing of a loss as you possibly could have imagined. How much more embarrassing would it have been, and where would the Knicks have been if it wasn't for the shooting of Deuce McBride? He was magnificent. But another concern I have about the Knicks is now with the new trade and the new transformation in the starting five, you've lost not only Dante DiVincenzo off your bench, but you've moved Josh Hart, who the past couple of years has been a bench spark and a bench plug, or a spark plug off the bench, rather, for you guys. Now he's inserted into the starting lineup. Deuce McBride is one guy that's going to step up, but the Knicks are going to need a lot more guys to step up off the bench. Can Cam Payne be a serviceable backup point guard? If he doesn't work out, will Tyler Kolek steal that role and be a backup point guard? Deuce McBride looks like an incredible six-man, but they're going to need a lot of guys to come off the bench and contribute. Obviously, they were missing Precious Achiuwa, but with no Precious Achiuwa now for at least a couple of weeks, Jericho Sims is another guy off the bench that's going to have to step up and be a key backup big man for the Knicks. So obviously, you love what you saw from Deuce McBride, but with the trade where you lost Dante DiVincenzo and essentially Josh Hart off your bench, and for your depth, you're going to need a lot more guys other than Deuce McBride to step up off the bench. And obviously, a team run by Tom Thibodeau and a team with as good of a starting lineup of Brunson, Hart, Bridges, Anunoby, and Towns, like the New York Knicks have, there are going to be nights where you're not going to really need your bench because you're going to be playing your starters heavy minutes. But ultimately, it's really important, and it's really good to have kind of a safety net and a cushion to have guys that you can rely on coming off the bench to give you key minutes to spell Brunson and Towns and those big guys in the starting lineup. Because we saw what happened in the playoffs last year. The starters were playing such heavy minutes, and obviously the Knicks were in close game after close game and nail-biter after nail-biter that they had to rely on their starters to play 42, 44, 45 minutes a game. But ultimately, that's not sustainable, and we saw what happened toward the end of that playoff run. People started getting injured, and everybody was absolutely gassed. So even though the Knicks have almost as good of a starting lineup as anybody in the NBA, the Knicks are going to need more bench guys other than Deuce McBride to step up and spell these starters, so that instead of playing starters 45 minutes, maybe you lower that to between 32 and 35 minutes, where they're still getting heavy minutes, but you're not overplaying them to the point where injuries become a concern and they're getting absolutely exhausted. And you have to keep in mind, this is just game one of a long 82-game season plus playoffs. you do not want to burn your starters out right away. So the Knicks are going to need some bench guys to step up early and provide a spark off the bench to spell some of these starters of some much needed minutes.
Yeah, 100%, Josh. And a 132 to 109 Celtics win in the end. Knicks look forward to their home opener on Friday. They'll take on Indiana, and it does not get any easier with that game. So Knicks lose this one by 23, but a long season ahead for the New York Knicks. Let's take things to football, as it's sad times right now at MetLife Stadium, as both the Jets and the Giants really struggling. We'll start off with the Jets. And Josh, on Sunday Night Football, prime time. I mean, the Jets get Davante Adams, and it says, all right, maybe it's time to go. Obviously, the new coach in there with Jeff Ulbrich and Robert Saleh fired a couple of weeks ago. Like, maybe it changes now. And Pittsburgh just took it to the Jets after a first half where the Jets looked really, really good. I mean, Josh, they had a 15-6 lead midway through the second quarter. And then when you look at it, Pittsburgh able to chip away, and the second half just wasn't even close. I think this one, Josh, comes down to the timely turnovers. And Aaron Rodgers, I talked about it on Monday, like, he is the guy. They brought everything possible for him to this club, and in the end, it hasn't worked out well because he hasn't played his best. And it goes on him. This loss especially, 2 interceptions. I mean, a 37-15 loss on the road is painful as it is. When you're the Jets and look to be a Super Bowl contender, it's even more painful. So I think this one goes on Aaron Rodgers, clearly, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, as a Giants fan myself, I'm not much happier than you guys as Jets fans, but you can't help but feel for Jets fans. I mean, you're looking at this roster on paper going into the season with Aaron Rodgers finally healthy, and you're thinking, man, we finally have the team. We finally have the team that can make New York football relevant again. Finally, a team that can go on a Super Bowl run. Finally, a team that can make me look forward to watching football every week. And it has not happened. I mean, the trade for Davante Adams, and it's just more of the same, right? Just struggling to get things going on offense. The Jets had a couple of solid drives in the first half, like you said, at a 15-6 lead, at 7-3 lead at the end of the first quarter, 15-6 in the middle of the second quarter. You're thinking, is this team finally getting it going? And then from there on out, it was all Steelers, and the Jets just could not get anything going on offense. And the addition of Davante Adams, and you look at the roster, both offensively and defensively, and all the names that are on this team, and you're thinking this team should be so good, but it's just not happening, and they're just struggling to find their way and get anything going right now. And you're thinking the addition of Davante Adams, Sunday Night Football, a game under their belt with the new coaching regime after they fired Saleh in Pittsburgh, big time game. Is this a game that they finally get it going? And is this a game that Aaron Rodgers finally puts the team on his back, gets a big win, and can start to turn the season around? And it still is just not happening. And ultimately, we're getting to a point where it's 2-5. When is it too little, too late? I mean, the Jets, if they want to just have a chance at making the playoffs, they have to come pretty damn close now to running the table for the entire rest of the year. And it's going to be really difficult given, the tough losses that the Jets have suffered now 4 in a row after that encouraging 2-1 start. And a lot of these games are winnable games as well. But at this point, the Jets are 2-5, and you're thinking, is it too late for this team to make a run? The time has to be now, and they have to turn this thing around now, starting this week, if the Jets are going to have any chance at potentially salvaging the season and somehow, some way sneaking into the playoffs. But if you're a Jets fan and you're just a football fan in general, you're looking at this Jets team with Super Bowl aspirations and how stacked this roster is from top to bottom, all the loads of talent and all the offensive weapons they have, and you're just waiting week by week. When is this team going to get it going? When are they going to figure it out? Maybe they're just not going to figure it out. Maybe they're just not good. You really don't know. But ultimately, this week was not the week for them to figure it out. And I mean, give credit to Pittsburgh. I mean, Russell Wilson looked very good in his first start of the year, got the starting job back after he got injured, and then Justin Fields kind of took the job from him for a little bit, but Russell Wilson made his season debut, and really Pittsburgh looked very good. But that is no excuse for this Jets team to lose in the fashion that they did and lose the way that they did in embarrassing fashion on Sunday Night Football on the national stage when a lot of people thought this was the game that they were going to finally turn it around. So as a Jets fan, as a New York sports fan, as a football fan in general, you're just left wondering, what is wrong with this Jets team? When are they going to figure it out? Are they ever going to figure it out? And might this go down as one of the most disappointing teams in NFL or even sports history?
Yeah, I mean they're on that track right now, Josh. So, but what I will say to the Jets fans really freaking out right now, I mean, when you look at the schedule from the first half compared to the second half, like they have New England next week, and you'd probably only say there's two or three tough games left in the season, and that's pretty much it. The rest of them you really can look at and say, all right, they'll win one. You would say probably they split with the Dolphins. They probably lose in Buffalo, and then maybe they lose to one of Houston, Seattle, or the Rams. But you probably expect to win one of those games as well, win a couple of those games as well. So in the end, like you look at that and say, all right, maybe they got a shot. But yes, it is time to freak out because they are 2-5. They do have to figure things out, and it is a tough time to be a Jets fan, and they're going to New England next week, so maybe they get things right there, but a lot to worry about for the New York Jets, and they lose 37-15 to the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday Night Football. Josh, on the other side of MetLife, it was the Giants who were really trucked by the Philadelphia Eagles on their home field in the return of Saquon Barkley to MetLife Stadium. And I mean, he just took advantage of the Giants in this one. 17 carries, 176 yards, and a touchdown, and didn't even play the fourth quarter. I think for the Giants in this one, it was the story of how bad their offense looked. I think when you look at the defense, like they had some really good spots earlier in the game. Of course, then Saquon started running to town, and that hurt the Giants in the end. But I feel like they kept this game a little bit closer for this offense. And then once it got to the second half, like it was just over from there. You look at Daniel Jones, 14 of 21, only 99 yards. But I mean, the 7 sacks. When you look at the Giants and you say, okay, well, they lost Andrew Thomas last week. 7 sacks after that, where they were looking pretty solid for the first part of the season. I mean, it's turned to disaster for the offensive line in just one game, Josh.
Right. I mean, this was an absolute disaster if you're the New York Giants. And obviously, going into this game, looking at their opponent, seeing that they were playing the Eagles and their old friend Saquon Barkley, you knew that they were going to give Saquon Barkley the ball a ton, and they were going to feed him and allow him to get his revenge on his former team. But the Giants kept this pretty close for the better part of the first half. But ultimately, it's the same story as every week, right? They just couldn't generate anything on offense. And was Daniel Jones good? No. Daniel Jones was not good. Didn't even throw for 100 yards in this game. Ended up getting benched late in the game for Drew Lock. Daniel Jones was not good, but there were some plays where Daniel Jones didn't even have time to breathe in the pocket before the Eagles were getting to him and sacking him before the play was even able to develop. So I'll give him that. But still, subpar offensive play and subpar quarterback play are the main reasons why the Giants are just not able to generate anything on offense. And this game was close through the first half. I mean, it was 14-0. I mean, it was 0-0 after 14-0. Then the Giants got a late field goal to end the second half, and you're thinking, okay, we're on the board. We might have a chance to win this. But then Saquon Barkley just took over. I mean, you said it. I mean, just another monster stat line for Saquon Barkley as he continues his magical season for the Eagles. 17 carries, 176 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, you knew that he was going to be the featured guy. And if you're the Giants and you didn't game plan for this, I mean, what are you doing? I mean, you knew that they were going to feed Saquon Barkley. You knew the circumstances. They ride Saquon Barkley anyway. Add in the factor that he's coming to his old stomping grounds at MetLife Stadium against his former team. And the Giants should have known that they were going to be running with him heavily as almost every single play as much as they possibly could. But ultimately, it goes back to the Giants' offense, right? They just can't generate anything on offense. Malik Neighbors, they couldn't get him the ball. The Eagles obviously figured something out on him and were able to double team him and completely cover him in the second half. I believe he had all 4 of his receptions and 41 receiving yards all in the first half. Wasn't able to generate anything in the second half. By that point, the game got out of hand, so maybe the Giants just stopped throwing him the ball and maybe he stopped playing. But ultimately, the Giants had a little bit of stuff going on in the first half, but if you're the Giants and you're as offensively limited as you are, if you have any opportunity to generate any offense in the first half or any opportunity at all in any football games, you need to take advantage of it, because the Giants had their opportunities in the first half to generate offense, but then once they weren't able to take advantage of those opportunities and all they were able to show for it was a field goal at the very end of the first half, then they were really not able to do anything offensively in the second half. So really, if you're watching the Giants, you're a Giants fan and you're a part of the Giants, it's really more of the same, right? Just not being able to generate consistent offense. And even when you have a promising drive and you get into the red zone, it looks like you have something going. Not being able to turn that into six and cash that into a touchdown is really what has ailed the Giants for all of this year and really the better part of the last 6 years ever since Daniel Jones took over as quarterback. So really, there's not much else to say about the Giants. It's really more of the same and just a tough weekend to say the least, Malamud, for the New York football teams between the Giants and the Jets, as both teams fall to 2-5 and are really struggling to get it going here.
Yeah, 100%. And the Giants, just their struggles on home field are just disastrous. I mean, they go on the road and they look like a better football team than they do on their home field. 0-4 now on the year at MetLife Stadium, and those Giants fans are not happy at home. They come to see the Giants, and it's just always a bit of a disaster when it comes to being at home. So something the Giants will have to figure out towards the rest of this season, but a 28-3 loss to Philadelphia. Giants move to 2-5 on the year, and Saquon Barkley gets his revenge with 17 carries, 176 yards, and a touchdown in his return to MetLife. And let's finish things off today with a Thursday night football preview. It is the 5-1 Minnesota Vikings traveling to Los Angeles to take on the 2-4 Los Angeles Rams. Vikings coming off a loss to Detroit. Josh, their first loss of the season, and a 31-29 last-second field goal in the end from Jake Bates to give the Lions the win in that one. And then the Rams get a comfortable win in the end against Las Vegas, a 20-15 win on their home field. But I think the story about this one is the injuries and the health of the star players, because we are going to have two star players actually coming back for this one. It's going to be Cooper Kupp coming back for the Los Angeles Rams in this one. So they get their star wide receiver back. Puka Nacua still on IR, but designated to return at some point in the next 3 weeks or so. But it's Cooper Kupp who's coming back, and TJ Hawkinson expected to return after a torn ACL that ended his season last year. He comes back. He's healthy once again, and he's most likely to come off the PUP list and return for the Vikings this week. So, I mean, these two teams, these two offenses get some high-powered players and some star players back. Josh, Minnesota as a 3-point favorite in this one, as well as the total sitting at 48.5. What is your outlook on this game, Josh?
Yeah, obviously a lot to unpack here, right? But the biggest story for both of these teams is getting key players back. You mentioned it, Cooper Kupp back for the Rams, TJ Hawkinson making his long-awaited return from an ACL injury from last year to return in this game on Thursday Night Football. Big game for both of these teams. I actually like the Rams in this game. I think the Rams get a big-time signature win. They're coming off a win against the Raiders this past week that'll maybe give them a little bit of confidence. So they're at home, nationally televised game, Thursday Night Football. I like Stafford here to have a big game. Stafford's kind of had an up and down year, but he has also been missing a lot of his weapons throughout the entire year. So I like Stafford to shine when the lights shine brightest, and get a big time win here for a team when they need it. And the Rams all of a sudden can win this game and find themselves right back in the mix with a 3-4 record. The Vikings obviously are a really good team. I think they're going to the playoffs. I think they're a really good team, but I kind of think that this is a trap game for them, right? They went into last week kind of 5-0, really feeling themselves, and then obviously they lost to a really, really good Lions team who's right up there with them as a top contender in the NFC. 5-1 after losing that last game. You'd look on paper and you'd think this is a game that the Vikings should really take advantage of and bounce back. But I think the Rams actually get the better of them here at home on Thursday Night Football. I like the Rams to take the win here and for Stafford to have a big-time game and for Cooper Kupp to make a big-time impact in his return from injury.
Yeah, that's definitely fair, Josh. I'm going to look at, I'm going to go on the other side. I'll take the Vikings. I think when you look at the Vikings and last week's loss, it's just a heartbreaker in the end, and they end up losing it to a division opponent. But when I look at the Vikings, I think they're in this game to prove that these first 6 games or so have not been a fluke, and they are deserving of that 5-1 record. I think they kind of have a point to prove here as they go on the road against a Rams team that hasn't been at their best this year. They had a lot of injuries. Obviously, the offensive line has been beat up, but they do have their talented players. Cooper Kupp coming back, like I mentioned, as well as Kyron Williams, who's been really strong this year. I look at the Vikings to kind of prove that this season has not been a fluke for them, and I'll take them. Josh, it's an interesting one on the total because it's sitting at 48.5, which is a little bit high, and it proves that these offenses have looked pretty good so far this year. I think when you look at the Vikings defense, I'd take them over the Rams defense. However, I still don't think the Vikings defense is where it needs to be in like the top half of the NFL. They have a really strong group. However, I think a team with a good offense can get after them. I'm going to take the over here. I think there's going to be points in this one, and two teams that have put up points in recent games. Obviously, the Rams have kind of struggled to do so. However, they're getting Cooper Kupp back. I think that brings this offense to a whole new level. The Rams, it does, and I think I'll take the over on this one at 48.5.
I'm going to agree with you, Malman. I'm going to take the over as well. I think we're in for a shootout. I think that these teams are going to be going back and forth at each other. I think we're going to see a lot of points scored in this game. I'm going to go with you, even though it's a very high over under. So 48.5 is a risky pick here, but I still think I'm going to go with the over. I think we're going to see a lot of points scored in this game. Obviously, a lot of weapons on both offenses and a lot of weapons returning for both offenses, which should hopefully lead to more offense and more points scored. So I'll go with the over here, and I think we're going to see a good one here on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, I mean, anything could be better than last week's game on Thursday night. We kind of expected it last week to be a snooze fest, but the Broncos obviously dominating the Saints. It just, I mean, we need anything better this week on Thursday night, Josh.
I think that we should be I mean, obviously anything, just about any game and any matchup between any two teams should be a better game than what we saw on Thursday Night Football last week. But I think that we're in for a good one with the Rams and the Vikings. I think that this is kind of an under the radar, low key good game here between, a team that is looking like they're headed to the playoffs and a team that won a Super Bowl a couple years ago, but it's kind of struggled to kind of rekindle their form, made the playoffs last year, but a team that's kind of looking to get back on track and get back in the mix. Obviously, we've heard all of the Cooper Kupp trade rumors. What are they going to do with them? Are the Rams going to potentially look into rebuilding and kind of resetting and recouping some assets for a guy like Cooper Kupp? Or do the Rams, after the win last week and a potential win this week, do they all of a sudden see themselves as back in the mix and instead they go for it with the upcoming deadline? So a really interesting game here between two very intriguing teams kind of going in different directions. But I think, especially with what we got on Thursday Night Football last week, I think we're in store for a very good high-scoring game this week on Thursday Night Football.
100%, Josh, and that'll do it for us. I mean, final words on this one as we look towards a great time in the sports world. The sports equinox is going to be here on Monday, so everybody stay tuned for that. We've been talking about that since the beginning of the month. But Josh, I mean, Yankees in the World Series, Knicks have started up again, Rangers, Islanders are here. We just need our football teams to do better, and then we'll feel some positives here.
And don't forget about the Liberty, Malum. The Liberty won the WNBA championship. I mean, it's a hell of a time in New York sports right now. Obviously, the main attraction is the World Series coming up. Obviously, football, those two teams need to step it up. But yeah, I mean, the Rangers and the Islanders, the Knicks are looking great, although that was a tough watch yesterday. But obviously, the World Series to look forward to. I mean, what a time in New York sports and sports in general. We've been talking about the sports equinox for forever, it seems like. I love when all four of the major sports leagues are ongoing at the same time, but it's a hell of a time in sports with so much to talk about. But obviously the main thing, the World Series, just a couple days away, Malamud. Looking forward to it. Can't wait.
Yeah, 100%. But that'll do it for episode 14 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. From Josh Malat, I've been Zach Malamud. Thanks for watching, and talk to you all on